we have Brenda Callahan to the stage, please? And Bill Peachy. Sisters and brothers, we're going to start our May Day Rally. Okay? If we can quieten the noise down a bit, we'll start our rally. Sisters and brothers, welcome to Glasgow May Day 2016. On behalf of our delegates representing the trade union branches all over the city, it's a great honour, as always, to warmly welcome you to our May Day celebration. I'm Jennifer McCary, I'm the Chair of Glasgow Trades Council, and along with Neil Anderson, our Vice Chair, we'll be chairing the rally together today. As ever, our speakers are nominated, debated and chosen by our delegates through a democratic process, and on their behalf I ask you to respect that by warmly welcoming all our speakers and by treating them with courtesy and respect. Today's speakers are Bill Peachy, representing the Justice for Janitors campaign, John McDonnell, Shadow Chancellor of the Exchequer, Ellen Connor, who's our STUC President this year, Chris Stevens, who's the SNP spokesperson, Trade Union spokesperson, and Brenda Callahan, who's here nominated by the 1916 Commemoration Committee in Glasgow. A couple of things to draw to your attention. We've got children's activities up the stairs, so just to make sure you know that. Thanks again to the inspiring sounds of the Glasgow Schools Big Band. It was fabulous to have them here. This is a very important time for us in our movement. It's been a very difficult year. The last 12 months have seen an unprecedented attack on our democratic rights as working people through the proposed anti-trade union bill. However, we've successfully built a united movement to oppose that bill and to resist that bill, and that's resulted in heavy blows to the government's plans, and we're not finished yet. We hope that our platform today will help strengthen the resolve of every trade union member in this room to stand united as a demonstration of the strength that we have. It's important that we start this rally with a symbol of solidarity, And that's why we've invited the first speaker to be a representative of the Glasgow janitors, who are in dispute with Glasgow City Council and who are striking for pay justice. Glasgow Trades Council welcomes Bill Peachey from Craigton Primary to the stage. We support your campaign for justice for janitors.
Thank you, Jennifer. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. As Jennifer told you, my name is Bill Peachey. I'm currently a primary school janitor. I've been asked to speak here in front of you a lot, and you're very intimidating, let me tell you. Representing the men and women who serve as janitors in our primary schools and nurseries. For the past 14 weeks, the vast majority of our primary school janitors have been in dispute, work to rule, 3-day strikes, over what we call work and context demand payments, dirty money as we call it, in Janny speak. These ladies and gentlemen serve in their communities, some for decades longer. And all we ask is to be treated equally, fairly, be paid the same as a janitor, working in a police station, doing the exact same job as every one of these men and women down there. No different. Terms and conditions are the same. They receive the dirty payments that we ask for. The company we work for, Cordia, is an arm's-length organisation of Glasgow City Council, a Labour council. This council and Cordia say we do not merit these payments. Now, we clean up on a daily basis human, animal waste. It's very unpleasant. Blood. We pick up litter on a daily basis, as do the litter pickers. We clear paths so that the children and the adults can get into their schools safely. We are told we do not merit these payments. You have a lollipop man and women that serve your community also. They receive the dirty payments because they stand out in inclement weather 4 or 5 times a day. Your janitors in your schools stand out in inclement weather, and still they say we do not merit these payments. Now, there's a lot of people in here, an awful lot brighter than me. That's discrimination in anybody's language, in any book. You check the dictionary, the definition of discrimination is a Glasgow Janny. All we're asking is that we are treated with a little bit of dignity. I'm sure most of us deserve it. Thank you. All we ask for is equal pay. We're not asking for the keys to the city chambers. These men and women are out and every day cleaning up used condoms, drug paraphernalia, broken glass, dead animals, so that our children, grandchildren can go to school safely in a clean, well-protected environment, in a building that merits their safety. We do not think it's too much to ask to be treated the same as every other person that receives these payments. We are the only people that do not receive these payments. Unison have estimated roughly that Cordia are spending £3,000 a day to undermine this just dispute. This dispute is now into its 14th week, ladies and gentlemen. That's £210,000 of your money. That £210,000 would pay every Janny in this city what they're entitled to for almost 2 years. Who's authorising this expenditure? Who's bankrolling Cordia? So we have a situation now, ladies and gentlemen, where we have a Labour council condoning discrimination in the workplace. We have a Labour council who support the senior management and the board of Cordia in treating the Jannies with complete and utter contempt by virtue of the fact they refused to even negotiate a settlement to this dispute. We are not asking for riches and abundance, we just want equal pay. All we want is an end to discrimination, an end to the contempt that we have to endure, All we want is justice for Jannies. What do we want? Justice for Jannies! And when do we want it? Thank you for your time, ladies and gentlemen.
Chamber are listening. Maybe somebody can have a quiet word in some people's ears. Maybe not so quiet, Bill. Thank you, and can I just confirm, not only do you have the backing of Glasgow Trades Council, but you have the backing of the entire Scottish trade union movement following the motion passed at STUC Congress. So we've really got to get behind this dispute. Glasgow Trades Council are absolutely delighted that John McDonnell accepted our invitation to speak at our May Day this year. He's a Labour MP, has represented Hayes and Harlington since 1997. He was born in Liverpool. His dad was a bus driver. His mum worked in BHS. He wasn't raised from the profits of Panamanian bank accounts. Brought up in a trade union family. His father was a branch secretary of the Transport and General Workers Union. And since being appointed Shadow Chancellor, he has championed the principle of tax justice and tackling tax avoidance, which is why we want to welcome his contribution to May Day today.
Let me just say with regard to the last speaker, I express this hope that there is an early, negotiated and just settlement of this dispute, and I hope that can be brought about at the soonest opportunity. It's been a quiet week in London. It's been a rough one, to be frank. It's been a rough one, but to be frank, that settlement, that just decision in the Hillsborough case was a bright light in this week. As you said, I was born in Liverpool but lost the accent when we moved south for work. And my family have always been Reds, both in terms of politics and in terms of football. My mum and dad, when they got married, their honeymoon was a Liverpool home match, a Liverpool away match, and my dad was a true romantic. He threw in a reserve match as well. But let me tell you, it taught us a number of lessons, and one of the lessons was the lesson of the Sun and Murdoch, and the power that they exerted. I was contacted by a Sun journalist some time ago, and he said, look, I'm a journalist from the Sun. I said, you can be one or the other, but you can't be both. Let me bring you solidarity greetings today from Jeremy Corbyn. He's speaking at the London rally today, and it's solidarity greetings from a socialist leader of the Labour Party. I'm proud to say it. Workers have been marching right the way across the UK on May Day celebrations this weekend in larger numbers than we've had for years. Our movement is growing stronger and it's building. I think stronger for a generation. And it demonstrates something. It demonstrates actually a form of solidarity that is now bringing the era of neoliberalism to an end. We're campaigning right the way across the country, dispute after dispute, campaign after campaign against austerity. And I think now that dominance of neoliberal ideology is beginning to shatter, and we've got the window of an opportunity we've not had for a generation, maybe for 30 years at least, to transform that ideology. And what we've been saying time and time again is begin to catch hold, that austerity is not an economic necessity, it's a political choice that was made by the Tories. And I think what's interesting as well, this last few weeks has exposed it even more. The Panama leaks demonstrated what an unjust, unfair and corrupt tax system that we have. And how, if we got the rich and the corporations to pay their way, there would be no need for austerity, there'd be no deficit whatsoever. And let me give you this commitment as the Shadow Chancellor. When we go back into power in 2020 or before, if we can, we'll introduce a fair tax system. There'll be no more Googles or Vodafones exposing the way it's an unjust system. And we'll bring the rich to make sure that they pay their way. At the moment, you've seen in the recent weeks some shareholder revolts of what's gone on. BP. If you look at what's happened in terms of pay, you have now, whereas in the 90s the chief executives and directors of the FTSE 100 were paid 50 times their workers' average salary, and it was a disgrace, it's now 150 times. What we want to do now is populate those companies' remuneration committees with trade unionists. Let trade unionists decide whether or not the directors and the chief execs are worth that sort of pay. But this is generated not in some tax haven in the Cayman Islands and elsewhere. This is generated in the City of London, the banks, the accountancy firms that have made tax evasion and tax avoidance on an industrial scale, an industry within this country, where they launder money from the City of London to the tax havens and then into the pockets of the richest in our country. Let me make this absolutely clear. We will clamp down on the tax evasion and tax avoidance when we go back into power, estimated at 130 billion a year. We know maybe not all of that is collectible, but we know at least half will be our target. We will bring those people as well who've evaded and, yes, industrially avoided. We will bring them to justice. We will name and shame those people who, through this tax system, have ripped our country off over decades. But what's interesting as well in recent weeks is that people have woken up to the fact that this is a crisis that's been used by these Tories to systematically attempt to dismantle the welfare state that was introduced by the Labour government under Attlee in 1945. And we've seen it in virtually every sector, whether it's health, housing, education, the attacks that have been waged on working people. And I want to pay tribute to some of those people, some of these organisations, some of those campaigns who've stood up against the cuts and privatisation and austerity. I want to say this, I want to congratulate RMT for standing up against the privatisation of Calumet. I coordinated the RMT parliamentary group over the years, helped refound it, and it's been time and time again the attempts to privatise, and each time we've beaten them back, and I hope and I'm confident we can do it again. I also want to pay tribute to PCS. The campaign that they've waged against the cuts of HMRC officers. I was the coordinator now, and Chris has taken over as the PCS coordinator of the parliamentary group. We'll do everything that we can to support you in Parliament and your demonstrations, and yes, elsewhere if necessary, to make sure those jobs are protected. You know as well as I do, I was involved in launching with the Bakers Union the fast food campaign. I want to pay tribute to the bakers and the young people who've waged that campaign against the McDonald's and all these other companies that have forced people on low wages, zero-hour contracts and intimidated trade unions when they've tried to organise. These are the heroes and heroines of our movement. You know as well as I do that in England we've had the junior doctors dispute, and there's been some discussion about whether people appear on picket lines. Let me say this, Jeremy and I have been on picket lines and demonstrations in support of the junior doctors, because this is an attack not just on the junior doctors, but on every health worker, and it's the Tories' attempt then to line them up for privatisation of the NHS, and we will stand in solidarity with them throughout their struggle. I just want to pay special tribute as well to a group of people who I helped in the first formation of their organisations. For a long while, people with disabilities in this country, to be frank, were targeted by the Tories for austerity, cuts, the introduction of the work capability assessment, people assessed for work, and then thousands of them dying before they could even take up that work. others sanctioned with no benefits left whatsoever. And then two organisations we brought together. One of them was Disabled People Against the Cuts, and the other was Black Triangle. I want to pay tribute for them to the campaign that they've waged, a direct action, occupation, which has forced Atos out of the contract for the WCA and is now taken on Maximus and others. And I also want to congratulate them for the direct action that they've taken in turning up in Parliament and occasionally seeking to storm the parliamentary chamber so they have their voice heard. It is because of them that people with disabilities in this country now have a representative voice that's on the campaign again. Let me just say this though briefly. This isn't just about cuts and austerity. It is also an attack on basic civil liberties in this country. The trade union bill is an attempt, it's an existential threat to the existence of trade unions in this country. We've had a number of victories in the Parliament at the moment. Actually, we didn't get them in the Commons, we got them in the House of Lords. I've been trying to abolish the place for 30 years. I'm beginning to have a rethink, not on a hereditary principle though. Now, we've defeated them at least 3 times this week and we'll push them back. And we'll try even further. But don't underestimate the determination of the Tories to get this bill through. So if it does become law, if we can't defeat it, our combined forces in the Commons and elsewhere, if we can't defeat it, let me give you this commitment. When we go back into power in 2020 or before, in the first 100 days of the next Labour government, this bill will be abolished. We will scrap it. And we will bring forward a legislation which restores trade union rights in this country and implements the ILO conventions on trade union rights so that we have again a democratic and free trade union movement in the UK. Finally, let me just say this. May Day is a time of international solidarity as well. And I just say this to you, I know there's differences of view on all of this. But the issues that we face as a movement are European and global. Issues around climate change, tax evasion, tax avoidance, the neoliberal policies that are being implemented through the EU right the way across Europe. That's why the Labour Party now is combining with Socialist and Social Democratic and other progressive movements, Podemos, Syriza, right the way across Europe, to campaign on these issues, but to campaign for the reform of the EU so that we stay within to reform it and make it a force for good and make it a force for a social Europe rather than the exploitative one that we have at the moment. Let me say very clearly, I know there's a disagreement on this among some comrades and brothers and sisters. I'm campaigning to remain within because I want that force of alliance of a trade union and labour movement that does transform Europe, tackles climate change, tackles tax evasion and avoidance, and brings forward trade union rights established throughout Europe, in every country of Europe as well. Finally, in international terms, our conscience as a movement does not end in the North Sea or at the Channel. Our conscience extends to the globe. That's why we welcome refugees into this country. And that's why Cameron shamed us when he refused to allow 3,000 children, unaccompanied, vulnerable kids, to come to this country. We demand that they are allowed to come here and find the comfort and succour and safety that they deserve. Finally, whatever happens in the future, in terms of Scotland and England and their futures, let me just say this. What unites us will always be class solidarity. It is class that holds it together. And I give this commitment. We will campaign for a Labour government in 2020, no matter what they throw at us, and you've seen it this week, what they've been throwing at us. But we're confident that we can take power. And then when we do take power, and I just hope we could do it beforehand, but if not, if it's 2020, when we take power, we will work as a basis of class right the way across the United Kingdom, uniting in solidarity from that lesson of 2 centuries ago that we put on our banners. Unity is strength. An injury to one is an injury to all. The workers united will never be defeated. It's solidarity, brothers and sisters. solidarity on this 90th anniversary of the general strike.
At some point before the end of the rally, you may see John disappearing off stage. It's not because of anything that MD's going to say, but it might have to leave early to catch a plane. So, just like to thank John very much for coming along to the rally today. Comrades, our next speaker is a member of the same union as I am, the EIS. Helen Connor has been a teacher for many years and has worked in both primary and secondary schools in North Lanarkshire. She is a lifelong trade unionist who has also worked as an education researcher in the House of Commons. She was president of the EIS in 2009-2010. She has also been on the STUC General Council for 10 years. She is here today in her capacity as president of the STUC. Comrades, please welcome Helen Connor.
Thanks, Neil. While John was speaking there, I thought, I wonder why I got the kind of follow-on from John, because I'm going to have to say that that was an amazing speech and something I think a lot of us have been waiting to hear for a long, long time, John. I'll do my best to follow it, and I really want to follow it by starting a bit where you ended off, John. I think it is a travesty that in this country, in the UK, we have a government who are clearly saying that they are not prepared to take any more refugees. It's absolutely clear to me that our country should be absolutely open to particularly children who are vulnerable and who are desperate for a place of safety. And therefore we should be very clear as a movement that our borders are open, and we are open. Our homes, our trade unions are open to refugees coming to this country. The other thing I just wanted to start with was the word justice. I'm absolutely clear at the recent STUC Congress, where we had the speaker from Justice for Jannies, and as somebody who works in a primary school and has worked in primary and secondary, I'll tell you something, and this is maybe giving away a wee state secret. When you start teaching, it's not actually the Heidi that you want to become friendly with, it's the Jannie. Because the Jannies are actually the people who run our schools, and without them they could not run. And it's appalling. It is appalling that they are being treated in this way by Glasgow City Council. And the STUC, brothers and sisters, are completely behind you in your fight. And like John, I hope it is resolved very, very quickly. The other thing about the word justice, comrades, is the justice that we just received in the last week. The justice for the 96. The justice that they had to wait 27 years for. If ever there was an example of collective action winning through, then that is it. I take my hat off to them. It was tremendous. The slogan for today was really, workers' rights are human rights. And we are absolutely clear that workers' rights are human rights. And we're not just talking about the past. The May Day Rally is a celebration of success in the past. But I think one of the important things going forward is the action on the trade union bill. Let us be very clear, colleagues. The attack on trade unionism is an ideological attack on our movement. And let me give a message from the STUC to David Cameron and to his government, take us on at your peril. We have already managed to get concessions, and we will continue to do so. Workers' rights are human rights. We have a right to fight for the equality of our members, for the equality and employment of our members. And we already have, at the recent STUC Congress, we had both Nicola Sturgeon and Kezia Dugdale very, very clearly saying that if the trade union bill goes through, obviously we hope it doesn't, but if it does, that they, as a government, will not implement it. I'm telling you now, because it's very easy. I've been around politics a long time. It's very easy in the run-up to elections to make all sorts of promises. But let me tell you, whoever forms the next Scottish Government, they better stick by that promise. Because let me tell you, the STUC, if there is any union in the STUC who find themselves having to break the law in order to represent their members, then they will have the full support of the Scottish trade union movement in going forward. Workers' rights are human rights. The Scottish election in the coming week is probably the most important election that we have ever faced in Scotland, because this is the only time that we have the power over taxation, over welfare, over employment law. And we have a responsibility, whoever forms the next Scottish Government, to make sure that they take on board these new powers, that they make sure that Scotland does not replicate the cuts that are happening across the country, that Scotland actually becomes a fairer, more equal society. I don't know about you, colleagues, but I don't want to live in a country that values Trident more than it values our young people. I don't want to live in a country where, if you can filter your millions off to Panama, and yet our elderly are sitting in hospitals because there are not enough care homes for them. And I don't want to live in a country where our youngsters are simply in classes where they are tested. I've never known, and there will be other teachers in the room, I've never known continually testing young people to actually improve their attainment. It doesn't. I'll tell you what improves their attainment. What improves their attainment is smaller class sizes, is extra support staff, and is tackling poverty at its roots. And that is what the next Scottish Government needs to do. Why should it matter where you live? Why should it matter whether you live in Newton Mearns, Bearsden, Shettleston, Coatbridge, where I come from? I'm allowed to criticise it, you're not, or anywhere else. Why should that matter? But, colleagues, it does. And it's time that we fought against that. And the only way we can fight against that is by tackling poverty at its core. And that is tackling poverty as young people come into the world. We can only tackle that by a very strong, united trade union movement. A strong, united trade union movement that are prepared to stand up for the most vulnerable who cannot stand up for themselves. I thank you for your invite.
Thank you very much for that, Helen. Our next speaker is Chris Stevens. He is the SNP's trade union spokesperson. He's a lifelong trade unionist, and before becoming an MP last year, he was a Unison officer and activist in Glasgow, where he was lead union negotiator representing members on many issues. He has helped to shape his party's views on and its profile with the trade union movement. But more than that, we know he has been a friend of May Day for many years, and they will always remain a trade unionist. So we're very happy to welcome him to speak to us today. Comrades, Chris Stevens.
Thank you very much, comrades and friends. It's a great pleasure to address you today at this May Day event, an event which is very much part of the trade union and workers' calendar. Let me firstly thank the organisers and Glasgow Trades Union Council for delivering this year's event. Since being given the privilege of representing the people of Glasgow South West, I have done my utmost to represent working people and the trade union movement to the best of my ability at Westminster. Taking over, as you've heard from John McDonnell, as chair of the PCS parliamentary group, John of course being a hard act to follow, and fighting low pay for workers in the Department of Work and Pensions, the lowest paid, where you'll find the lowest paid civil servants, fighting proposed HMRC closures which will shut offices in towns and cities across the UK, and many towns and cities where HMRC is the biggest employer. I believe that after representing the people who elected me, my next important duty is to highlight trade union campaigns. And I've done that by submitting motions to Parliament praising the inspirational work of the Better Than Zero campaign, or submitting motions supporting industrial action in this city, the homelessness case workers who were out on strike earlier on this year and last year, and of course the Glasgow janitors. And I wish to place my full support to the Justice for Jannies campaign on behalf of me and many of my colleagues. And colleagues, I hope the Council will also rethink their plan to remove public holidays from workers, including the May Day public holiday. May Day is a workers' day, and that's the way it should remain in this city, and I hope the Council think again. Colleagues, I've been asked specifically to talk to you about the anti-trade union bill and what I've been doing in relation to that and where I believe we should go from here. Because that's what it is. It is an anti-trade union bill. And in all stages of this bill, I've encountered two types of Tories. Firstly, the ignorant, who don't have a clue how a trade union operates or how a modern trade unionised workplace operates, and those who do know how a trade union operates. And it's the second group who are the most dangerous, because they are the group who want to kill off the trade union movement. In the last few weeks, we've seen Tory somersaults of Olympian proportions. But these concessions only prove one thing, colleagues: how unwanted and unnecessary the whole bill was in the first place. Because even taking those concessions still leave a bill that attacks trade union organisation. The insistence of having a reserve power to cap facility time says one thing: they will use it, and they'll use it to crush opposition to their plans to dismantle public services. The dilution of ministers only providing a response to a review on e-balloting tells us they have no intention of allowing trade unions to conduct ballots using electronic means. And changes to political funds, although there's been a major concession, are just an attack, not just on the Labour Party, but an attack on a trade union's ability to fund general campaigning. Anti-austerity campaigns, community campaigns, health and safety campaigns, anti-racism campaigns. And we in the SNP have been consistently clear: it's up to a trade union who it funds, and if trade union members don't like where their funding arrangements to go to, then the answer to that is very simple: they take that up with the trade union. Colleagues, the biggest victory of all has probably been on the check-off arrangements, because that was the biggest threat to our movement. Victories and concessions have been achieved, and they've been achieved by the trade unions and joint opposition working together closely and using the power of our arguments and taking on that bill and pointing out how much the trade union bill is an ideological assault to our movement. We can defeat this bill, but to continue to do that, this anti-trade union bill is too important for us not to work together. Because if we don't work together, there'll only be one winner, and that will be the Tories. Comrades and friends, I'm proud to be a trade union member, and I was proud to be a trade union activist representing workers for over 20 years. And I say to you today that I'll continue to work to see the draconian trade union bill killed off for good, and I'll continue to fight for better and stronger workers' rights. Thank you all, and enjoy this special day. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you for continuing to be a fine brother to our movement as you enter Parliament and in your work there. I'm going to do a shout out. I'm going to do a shout out for our brothers and sisters in the yellow t-shirts from the CalMac campaign. Our brothers and sisters from the RMT. We're asking that you give them our support. We want to commend them on their campaign to keep CalMac public, because it's a lifeline service, because Serco can't be trusted and they specialise in failure, and they've been taking it everywhere from Stornoway to Gourock. They've received overwhelming support from the public, and they're asking that we seek a commitment from all our Holyrood candidates on this issue. We keep the pressure up once they're elected. Glasgow Trades Council fully back the campaign, and we thank them for all their colourful efforts on May Day this year. Good luck. We're very pleased to, well, it's a film that we're going to call it previewed last night because we're going to claim that this is the premiere of it, but we're very pleased to share a short film that is a result of a collaboration between the STUC, the Better Than Zero campaign and the Radical Film Network. It was made yesterday and it's ready for us today. We're very excited to see it. The Better Than Zero campaign is very close to Glasgow Trades Council's heart. Last year, we had a speaker send a message from the fast food strikes of America, inspiring us to take our campaigns to young people around exploitative working practices, around zero-hour contracts, around minimum wages. And look what's happened, brothers and sisters. We have one of the most exciting campaigns in the Scottish trade union movement, called the Better Than Zero campaign. Now we want to support their campaign to specifically highlight the con that is the supposed national living wage. Of course we know it's not that, but did you know, even worse than that, not only is it a licence to pay poor wages, covered up and badged as a living wage, but also it's causing age discrimination in the workplace because you only get it if you're over 25. So the under 25s in our workplaces are being exploited by employers all over our city, all over this country, and many of them are doing the same job as their colleagues and they're getting paid less for it. Sometimes they're supervising colleagues and they're getting paid less than those colleagues. And the Better Than Zero campaign are doing a fantastic campaign to highlight that. They've got a red and an amber and a green badging system for employers. Red for discriminatory practices, amber for you're paying the national minimum wage to everybody and you're not discriminating against age, and of course a green light to all those accredited living wage employers. Now, we know that you like to socialise after May Day, and I don't know what your tipple is, but I'd like to remind you that if you like a pint or two with your comrades, then Redmonds and Brewdogs are living wage pubs in this city. If your disposition is towards the temperance side of the movement, you can get an ethical cup of coffee and Counterculture, the Spoon Cafe and the Clachan, who are also living wage accredited employers. And if you've got the energy to go to the dance in the night, then Firewater is the place for you because it's a living wage nightclub in our city. So I'd like to introduce this brand new movie premiere from the Better Than Zero campaign.
And this is important because this day represents hundreds of years of workers standing up for their rights. We fought for the living wage and we won it. We fought for the 8-hour day and we won it. But in 2016, there's something else that we desperately need to fight for, and that's to end zero-hour contracts. In Scotland, 100,000 workers are on zero-hours contracts, and we're told this is a lifestyle choice, that it's flexible, but the reality is far from it. Life on a zero-hours contract means you have no stability, you don't know if you can pay your bills or your rent. It's about a lack of respect for workers and a lack of dignity in the workplace. And we're trying to challenge this in Better Than Zero. Because when we stand together, we have the power to actually change things. And I think that we're all better than zero.
Thank you to the filmmakers and the STUC and the young people from the Better Than Zero campaign who worked so hard to make that. Let's get that spread around social media. Let's raise their profile as high as we can, and let's make sure there's no doubt that the Scottish Trade Union movement is behind this campaign and at the side of young people who are facing exploitation in the workplace. I'm very pleased to introduce our final speaker. I'd ask you to stay along because we have a special tribute to the work of the Justice for the 96 campaign that we're going to ask you all to take part in. So please stay put. We've just got a very short thing to do and we really appreciate your full participation in that. When the Glasgow 1916 Commemoration Committee approached Glasgow Trades Council to host a speaker at this year's rally, it received our unequivocal support. Some might say it's a contentious issue in this city, but through the eyes of organised labour, that moment in history represented a collective courage and an ambition to redefine the lives of working people. So we were delighted to welcome Brenda Callaghan. Brenda is a full-time officer in the trade union movement working for SIPTU, but she's an activist in her own right. Like many activists in our movement in Ireland, Brenda has dedicated her labours to the cause of justice and equality, of workers and of women, and like many in our movement, she has fought for peace in Northern Ireland and been part of the peace process. If the 1916 Rising has told us anything, it says without justice there is no peace, and without equality there is no justice. We'd like to welcome Brenda Callaghan to the stage.
Comrades, sisters and brothers, it is my privilege to bring greetings of solidarity from Belfast Trades Council, all Irish trade unionists and all progressive forces across the island of Ireland. And I'd like to thank the 1916 Commemorative Committee for their invitation to commemorate the role of James Connolly today. First of all, I'd like to bring particular solidarity greetings to the janitors. Belfast Trades Council will be formally issuing its support to you, but obviously we hope that you have a swift, fair and just resolution of your campaign immediately. A century ago last Sunday, the great Edinburgh-born but very much Irish-rooted socialist James Connolly commanded the revolutionary forces when he led his citizens' army into the 1916 rebellion. That rebellion remains as controversial in Ireland as it does in Scotland, but nonetheless, Connolly's aims and objectives should be the aims and objectives of every worker worldwide. Connolly took a stance against empire, imperialism, and the working class being used as cannon fodder in the war. He lived his life according to the philosophy of Karl Marx, and on that Connolly said, "The philosophers have only interpreted the world in various ways. The point, however, is to change it." Connolly set about trying to change the world for the betterment of the working class and the peoples enslaved by imperialism. Comrades, given the crisis faced by the labour movement and workers generally, we must rededicate ourselves to achieving Connolly's vision. The issues have different titles today. In Connolly's day, it was empire and imperialism. Now it's neoliberalism and multinationals, but the principles remain the same, with escalating assaults on working people. Under the label of austerity, we are faced with an intensification of the war by capital, both on the greatest number of our citizens and on what remains of our democracy. Connolly played a significant role in changing the course of Irish history, and 1 month before his execution he wrote, "The cause of labour is the cause of Ireland, and the cause of Ireland is the cause of labour. They cannot be dissevered." It is proper that Labour commemorates him on this May Day. But Labour has many enemies. As you exercise your democratic franchise this Thursday, challenge the nationalist parties, both here and in Ireland, who want to remain part of the European Union, that so-called fine custodian of democracy. And I have to take offence at John O'Donnell's view that the European Union provides workers' rights. The European Union has worked hard to destroy collectivism. Its idea of workers' rights is individualism, so that the employers can trample each and every worker as they do. Ask why your parties are supporting the European Union. Comrades, reflect on the secret negotiations currently underway regarding the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership, TTIP to you and I, or CETA, its Canadian equivalent. They have nothing to offer working people. Their purpose is purely to enhance and protect the profits of private corporations who will be able to sue national governments for uncompetitive practices, such as the introductions of national minimum wage. Those parties' policies are alien to the collective internationalism that Connolly described to. Furthermore, I would argue that Connolly would be voting out in the referendum taking place on the 23rd of June this year. As workers, don't let the real nature of the EU be obscured by the haze of the right-wing xenophobic and racist campaign for withdrawal. Remember, Connolly, the cause of labour. Well, the European Union is no cause of labour. Nowhere are Connolly's socialist principles more obvious than in the proclamation of the Republic, as read out by peers on the steps of the GPO that Easter morning. It guarantees religious and civil liberties, equal rights and equal opportunities to all its citizens. Only New Zealand, Denmark and Finland had universal suffrage at that time. I'm from the north, and my parents didn't get a vote in local elections until 1973 due to the British-endorsed unionist gerrymandering. That's a long way from Connolly's vision. The proclamation, of which Connolly was the key influencer, pledged to cherish all the children of the nation equally. Conley, if with us today, would be leading another rebellion as inquiries into systematic institutional child abuse continue north and south. Thousands of victims, like the young women from the Magdalen laundries, all dishonoured by the complicity of establishments, and in particular the Catholic Church, whose influence would not have been permitted in Connolly's Ireland. Regarding Irish nationalism, Connolly said, "The struggle for Irish freedom has two aspects. It is national and it is social." Connolly put forward the thesis that the two strands of revolutionary thought in Ireland, national liberation and socialism, were not antagonistic but complementary. Sadly, in today's world, the socialist concept has disappeared from the agenda. During the time of the Home Rule debate, Connolly predicted that such a scheme would mean a carnival of reaction north and south, would set back the wheels of progress, would destroy the oncoming unity of the Irish labour movement and paralyse all advanced movements while it endured. How correct he was. While the violence has almost abated from the streets, the two communities are more divided down sectarian lines than at any time in history. We are working with a political system that further entrenches these divisions and offers no protection for the working class. Both traditions, Unionists and Republicans, are administrating British welfare cuts, while the level of suicides, particularly among young men, are some of the highest in the world. A free socialist Ireland of James Connolly's philosophies are not on the agenda of any mainstream party, even those who proclaim the principles of Connolly as their own. 30 years of violence and British rule is even more entrenched. We in Belfast Trades Council welcome the decision of the jury in the Hillsborough inquest. 96 people went to a football match and never came home. The Bloody Sunday inquiry demonstrated the power of the British state in covering up its violent reactions. This has been confirmed by the Hillsborough inquest. As workers, we have only to ask the miners at Orgrave about the credibility of the South Yorkshire Police Force. Northern Ireland has many outstanding inquests into the victims of the Troubles, particularly those that were killed by state forces. Also, many more inquiries are needed, such as one into the Ballymurphy massacre, when 11 civilians were murdered over a 3-day period in August 1971. These victims and others have not received the same publicity as the 1972 Bloody Sunday shootings. Nonetheless, their relatives also deserve truth and justice for their loved ones. Our politicians won't deal with the legacy of the past, but until they do, the hurt will not begin to heal. Until the historic facts of all these matters are revealed, sectarian wounds will remain raw and painful, just as the people of Liverpool continued to ache because their friends and comrades had been so badly disgraced. James Connolly articulated his feminism, constantly describing women as the slaves of slaves, and in modern Ireland, north and south, that remains the case. No Irish woman can have an abortion anywhere on the island. One thing that unites all the mainstream parties, north and south, unionist and nationalist, loyalist or republican, is that no woman can control her reproductive rights. Women elsewhere in the UK have the right to choose, but not an Irish woman. We have to pay for private clinics in Britain and Europe to exercise our right to choose. In Ireland, Rich women have abortions, poor women have babies. A young Belfast woman who recently procured the abortion pill has now a criminal record because her so-called flatmates reported her to the police. Instead of her being offered support and counselling, this woman was criminalised. Shortly, a Belfast mother will appear in court for having assisted her daughter in obtaining an abortion. A society who makes criminals out of women who exercise their right to choose needs the ideology of Connolly to create a fair and equal society. I understand, sisters and brothers, that reproductive rights are shortly to be devolved to the Scottish Government. I urge you not to let the forces of repression, led mainly by the male-dominated courts, make decisions on a woman's right to choose. It is any woman's right, and it's time society started to trust women. In 2006, workers faced many challenges, 2016 even. This month it will be 100 years since the badly injured Connolly, too weak to stand, was tied to a chair and cold-bloodedly executed. They killed a man, but his socialist belief of equality, national freedom and international worker solidarity remain relevant and strong. I want to leave the last word on Connolly to Patrick Pearse, who, when he surrendered on behalf of the provisional government, declared, "If I were to name individuals, my list would be a long one. I will name only that of Commandant General James Connolly, Commanding Officer of the Dublin Division. Wounded, he is still the guiding brain of our resistance. Comrades, friends, let's follow in the footsteps of Connolly, and on our behalf and that of all oppressed peoples, smash the chains of capitalism, neoliberalism and tyranny forever." No passaran.
Thank you, Brenda. Thanks for coming to visit our May Day, and thanks for your stirring words and message. We're coming to the end of our May Day celebrations. I'm going to thank a few people, and in doing so, I'm going to invite Luca Manning up to the stage also to get yourself ready. So thank you so much to the people who, the staff of the fruit market, who've helped us look after you, and with great attention to detail and care and consideration, so thank you to them. Thanks to Tricia Donnelly, our secretary, for the power of work that she does to put together May Day, for Tommy Breslin at the media desk, and Cameron Communications there as well, Alan from there, for Neil Anderson from helping chair and steward the demonstration, Kevin Buchanan for his filming, Dave Moxlam for helping out as well. All of our speakers have been absolutely fantastic. John McDonnell, Helen Connor, Chris Stevens and Brenda, and of course Bill Petrie for the Jannies. We're going to have some music supplied by our delegate DJ Scott Donoghue, so don't go away, stay around, have some chat with your friends and comrades. But we couldn't let today pass without marking the spectacular scenes that we saw this week in the Justice for 96 campaign. We have a shared history in this city with Liverpool. We have a shared working class culture. We have a shared industry. And we certainly, as a movement, the trade union movement has stood behind the Justice for 96 campaign since its inception. It is an inspiration for working class communities all over the country. We want to pay tribute to them and what they've achieved. Luca Manning, who is not only a member of the Glasgow Schools Big Band, but also a brother in our movement also, has volunteered to lead off the singing. Do you have your programmes? We'll put the words on the other side. And would ask everybody to stand if you can. If you can't, then sit comfortably and sing with us to end May Day, You'll Never Walk Alone.
When you walk through a storm, hold your head up high and don't be afraid of the dark. At the end of the storm is a golden sky and the sweet silver song of the lark. Walk on through the wind, walk on through the rain, though your dreams be tossed and blown. Walk on with hope in your heart, and you'll never walk alone. You'll never walk alone. Walk on with hope in your heart, and you'll never walk alone. You'll never walk alone. Solidarity with the 96 victims of Hillsborough.
And comrades, just and comrades, just one last thank you that hasn't been done. A big thank you to Jennifer, our chairperson of GTUC, for all the work that she's done through the year for May Day. And been asked to tell you that May Day t-shirts are on sale. They are now down at half price. So get yourself a bargain, May Day t-shirts.
Thank you. Bye.